together. Om Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karvavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we will continue with where we were. We had completed verse number 36, right? So we should be on 37 now. So let us chant verse number 37. Please unmute yourself. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Hato va prapsyasi swargam
Ato va prapsyasi swargam
Jitva va bhokshyase mahim
Jitva va bhukshase mahim
Tasmadutishta kaunteya
Tasmaduttishta kaunteya
Yuddhaya krita nishchayah
Yudhaya krita nishchayah.
Okay, so as usual we will look at the word meanings first. So the breakup is hataha va prapsyasi swargam jitva va mokshyase mahim tasmat uthishta tasmat ta with a halant tasmat uthishta kaunteya yuddhaya krita nishchayah. And the anvaya, the sentence formation, hataha va swargam prapsyasi. So that va is or, so you can take it as hataha swargam prapsyasi, meaning that, okay, let's finish the anvaya. But hataha swargam prapsyasi jitva va mahim mokshyase, full stop. He kaunteya, comma, tasmat yuddhaya krit nishchayah uthishta. So Krishna is giving the possible consequences of the battle. Hataha va, either. Va is either. Hataha. What will happen? Hataha is you will be killed, or jitva, you will conquer the enemies. These are the two possibilities. So he says hataha va swargam prapsyasi. If you are killed in this battle, you will attain swargam, you will attain the heavens. Va, or else. The other alternative is what? Jitva, you will have won the war. Mahim bhokshyase, you will enjoy the entire kingdom. Mahim actually means the world. So you will enjoy the entire world, you will enjoy. Bhokshyase, hey Kaunteya, son of Kunti, tasmat. Therefore, what should you do? You krita nishchaya yuddhaya. Krita nishchaya means make a resolution, make a commitment. For what? Yuddhaya, to fight. So therefore, yuddhaya krita nishchaya, having made the commitment to fight, uthishta, get up, hey Arjuna. Because Arjuna, remember, is sitting on the chariot. He has thrown away his bows and arrows and is sitting there. So he's saying, hey Arjuna, if you die, if you are killed, you will go to heaven. Alternatively, you will be victorious and you will enjoy this world. Therefore, get up, Arjuna, having made a commitment to fight. Right? So there is this, in the scriptures say that if you are killed in a dharmic war, which is you are fighting for what is right, what is dharma. If you are fighting to protect dharma and you are killed in that war, hatavasan swargam prapsyasi, you will definitely get the swarga which is reserved for people who, Kshatriyas, who fight in the dharmic war and die in the war. So you will get swarga. Alternatively, jitvava mahim mokshasi, you do not die, you will win this war, you will get back the kingdom. That kingdom which you have been waiting for the last 13 years, you will get it back and you will enjoy. So he says mahim, because there you are taking it for granted that the entire earth, the Prithvi, is the kingdom. So Arjuna, either way, situation is win-win. Well, you win both ways, whether you die or you conquer the enemies. There is only victory for you, because one way you go to heaven, the other way you will enjoy the earth. Therefore, tasmat kaunteya utishta. Hey Arjuna, first you have to get up. Why? Because you have been sitting since the first chapter. The last verse of the first chapter, you are sitting there on the chariot, refusing to fight. And yuddhaya kritanishchayaha. Make a resolve, make a commitment to fight this war. And therefore, Arjuna, may you get up and fight. This is what he has said. So, we have seen 3 levels of arguments. So, this is the end of the 3rd level of argument. What are 3 levels? Anybody?
Adhyatmika,
Adhyatmika drishti.
And Laukika Drishti.
Excellent. So Krishna has given 3 levels of arguments. Adhyatmika drishti, which is the philosophical level. So he has first few verses from verse number 11 to verse number 25, 26, 27. He gave all philosophical arguments. Then dharmika drishti. He says from the point of view of dharma also you have to fight. And then laukika drishti, from the worldly angle also, because people will speak badly about you, otherwise you have to fight. So philosophically, you have to fight. Ethically, you have to fight. Worldly angle to save your honor, also you have to fight. Any way you look at it, Arjuna, any angle you look at it, Arjuna, there is no option not to fight the war. Therefore, Arjuna, may you get up and fight. And what is the way you should fight? Should you go into the war full of anger and wanting revenge and, looking at each other with massive anger and I will kill. Should you go into that? So how should you go into the war? That is now being said in the next verse. A very, very important verse.
So can I ask a question?
Yes, of course. Please go ahead.
So if I'm talking about the present times, so for example, when we had the Kargil war between India and Pakistan, so when the Indian soldier is martyred, he goes to heaven according to this verse. But what about the soldier who is fighting on behalf of Pakistan? If he dies while fighting for Pakistan, when I'm talking about the Kargil war, then from my perspective, I will say that they were not right, but from their perspective, they might feel that we are fighting for our dharma.
Well, the point is the Shastra is meant for us. So when we are deciding what to do, Shastra is the guiding factor. So when somebody else is deciding what to do, they have a Shastram which is the guiding factor. So try to extend our Shastram to cover theirs will get us nowhere. Right? Yeah.
No, so what I meant was can we say that that is also a righteous war?
No, why do you want to get into that? Because there is no end to the argument, right? Somebody, they will say that, okay, Allah tells you to fight. You will say, Gita tells you to fight. Where are you going to get? That kind of argument has no end.
Okay.
Yeah, one more question was there.
What about Duryodhana and everybody? It is said in Gita that this is what I've heard, that they also went to Swarga, but they were not they were not being righteous. Then how come they went to Swarga?
It's called a Veergati. The what they call destination for a person who is a brave person. I don't think anybody doubts that Duryodhana was brave.
Yes.
All right, so let's go to verse number 38. So we will chant. Please unmute yourself. Sukha dukhe same kritva.
सुखदुःखे समे कृत्वा
Labha labhau jaya jayau.
लाभालाभौ जया जयौ
Tato yuddhaya yujyasva.
ततो युद्धाय युज्यस्व
Naivam papamavapsyasi.
नैवं
Okay. So, sukha dukhe same kritva labha alabha. So, labha labhau is the plural way of writing it. If you break it up, it becomes labha alabha. Jayaha ajayaha. So, jaya jayo, because of labha labhau, it's dual case. Therefore, it is written as labha labhau jaya jayo. When you break it up, it is labha alabha jaya ajayaha. Tataha yuddhaya yujyasva. Naivam is na evam. Na evam. Papam. Ma with a halant. Papam. Avapsyasi. Okay. Anvaya will be, the sentence formation will be Sukha dukhe labha alabha or labha alabhau jaya ajayau. You can add cha over here and in brackets because this is the first part of the sentence. Sukha dukhe labha alabha jaya ajayaha. That is one part of the sentence. Cha same kritva comma tataha yuddhaya yujyasva full stop evam papam na avapsyasi. So, what is he saying? Same kritva. Kritva literally means make. So, same kritva, making, which means having the attitude of what? Same. Of the same. Not some of same. Same means same. Here, same means same. Same kritva, make them the same. Look upon both things as the same. So, he is going to give pairs of things. First, he is saying same kritva. Look upon both these things as the same. What are they? Sukha, dukkha. Pleasure and pain should be taken as not different from each other, which means your attitude towards pleasure and pain should be the same. Labha, alabha, gain and loss. Jaya, ajayaha, victory and defeat. And tataha, having got this attitude, having maintained this attitude, yuddhaya yujyasva, prepare for battle. Full stop. Evam, in this way, if you fight the battle in this way, papam na avapsyasi. There will be no papam which you will incur. Okay, that is what he is saying, that there is a particular method of fighting. You have to fight dispassionately. If you fight with anger and resentment, there is going to be a lot of karmic effect. So don't do that. So regarding happiness and sorrow, gain and loss, victory and defeat, you should be having the same attitude. And having done that, prepare for the war and you will not be incurring any sin. So with this, the new phase of teaching starts. The first phase of the teaching is over. Krishna is branching off into his next phase. And this is, remember that the Veda is divided into two portions, philosophy and religion. Actually, religion comes first, Dharma Shastram comes first, and philosophy, Jnana Kanda, comes next. In Bhagavad Gita, we are seeing the second chapter, we are seeing the reverse. We are seeing the Jnana Kanda, the philosophy which came first. Now what has to come is the Karma Kanda part has to come. Jnana Yoga has been covered so far. And now Krishna is going to introduce Karma Yoga. And this is a transition sloka. In between the two, branches between the two portions of Jnana Kanda and Karma Kanda, Jnana Yoga and Karma Yoga, Krishna has introduced this particular sloka as a transition sloka. So remember that Karma Kanda prescribes a way of life. What does Jnana Kanda do? It prescribes the right view of life. So Karma Kanda is the right way to live. Jnana Kanda is the right way to look at life. So Brahma Shastram, which is Jnana Kanda, is over now as far as this chapter is concerned. And Krishna is beginning Dharma Shastram, how to act in the world. How to look at everybody is over. How to look at the world is over. So Samatvam Yoga Uchyate. That is the critical portion. Samatvam Yoga Uchyate. That balance of mind is called Samatvam. That way of looking at everything samaha in the same manner, that is called Samatvam. Samatvam Yoga Uchyate is a very famous definition of yoga. When you are balanced in mind, when your view of all events which you face is such that you look upon them equally, and not equally means in an equal manner, neither liking them nor disliking them, so that your mind is not disturbed. And this is a very practical point of view for all of us also, because in not only in the spiritual field, in any field in life, if you have to learn to be efficient, what is the most important thing you have to learn? And the most important thing about learning is what? Unless your mind is balanced, you will not learn. A disturbed mind can never learn anything. And therefore, Krishna is introducing Samatvam as Karma Yoga. A very beautiful definition. Karma Yoga is being defined as Samatvam itself, balance of mind. Samatvam is not being carried away by any situation in life. It doesn't mean being a stone, okay? Because people say that, Karma Yoga means you don't react. You have to not react at all. You have to have a stone face. No. Samatvam is important. Your mind is there. Mind will have a little bit of disturbance here and there, but you should not be carried away by any situation in life. And then Samatvam is very important because all of us know that when you are under the grip of very strong emotion, your analytical powers, your discriminatory powers, your thinking ability is affected. You are able to be analytical and have a discriminating mind only when emotion is not overwhelming you. And that, therefore, this thinking power of ours is optimal when the mind is samaha, when the mind is balanced. So what is the opposite of samaha here? Vishamaha. Vishamaha means disturbed. If the mind is disturbed, then the discriminative powers go away. They are lost. And therefore, not only all decisions will be wrong, because there is no discrimination, decisions will definitely be wrong. Not only that, more importantly, what is the most important thing about experiences? Because we all have experiences due to prarabdha karma, right? We have all prarabdha. And therefore we learn from the experiences. You have good experiences and bad experiences. Every experience is valid, is not a lost experience, not lost time, if we have learned something from that experience. And therefore, to learn from any experience, you should have a calm mind. It may be a very troublesome, very painful experience, but if you are resenting that experience and raving and ranting about it, you will lose the capacity to learn from that experience. And therefore, a balanced mind, samaha mind, very important. So two things is, when the mind is samaha, mind will be functional properly. Your discriminative capacity will be functioning, and therefore decisions are likely to be more correct than otherwise. And you will learn also from every experience. So there is no such thing as a wasted experience. But if your mind is Vishamaha, disturbed all the time, decisions will definitely be wrong. And not only that, you would have lost the capacity to learn from every experience. Every experience will be wasted for you. And therefore, to learn any valid lesson from any circumstance, from any event which I face, I should have a calm mind, a relatively calm mind. And that is what Krishna is saying here. He is emphasizing the capacity to maintain emotional balance as a very, very important virtue for a seeker. So not only for a seeker, actually, for anybody to be successful in life, emotional balance is the most important. And therefore, if those of you who are interviewers, who interview people for jobs, you will know that you look for a balance of IQ and EQ. It's always a question of IQ and EQ. EQ is emotional quotient. So the emotional quotient describes how easily a person is disturbed or not disturbed. And a person may have a very high IQ, but if his EQ is not healthy, normally he cannot perform well in any organization. Most organizations look for EQ as equally, if not more important than IQ. And this EQ in Gita is what Krishna calls samatha. So he says, sukha dukkhe same kritva. So in scientific language, improve your emotional quotient. There can be a doubt here, right? Sukham and dukkham are what? They are not same. Happiness and sorrow are opposite experiences. How can Krishna say that I should look upon them as the same? Right? How can I say my red t-shirt looks to me the same as my yellow t-shirt? Krishna cannot be saying all that. So we have to properly understand the statement. There is something called Tatparyam, which we have talked about before. Tatparyam is the basic essence of any statement. So here the Tatparyam is that, the essence of the statement is that you should not have any disturbance of mind. It doesn't mean that the experience is the same. When he says look upon them as the same, Krishna is not telling you that, look, happiness and sorrow are the same experience. They are not. They are different in nature. They are opposite in nature, actually. They are completely opposite in nature. One makes you happy, one makes you sad, right? So the anubhava, the experience is not the same. But what Krishna is saying is that your response to that anubhava should be the same. Given different experiences, opposite experiences, my response to it should be the same. So how is this possible? How can I respond in the same manner to different experiences? So you have to examine what is a response, right? What is a response? If you want to categorize or analyze and say what exactly is a response?
How we react
Reaction
to
to a
it.
stimulus.
It is an action then. The
Okay, reaction, action, fine. What
Action.
is that? In terms of
Emotional disturbance.
what is an emotional disturbance?
How we let the situation
Anger.
Mind
Getting angry
reaction
at
in the
the
mind.
So you have anger, you have jealousy. What is a common word for all those things?
Is passion. We have to be.
negativity,
Sensory reaction.
Attachment, when we get attached.
Mind.
So you can have anger, which is negative reaction. You can have happiness, which is a good reaction. What is common in both?
Attachment.
Attachment, raga and dvesha.
Both are thoughts.
Oh, okay.
Okay, all responses are therefore finally thoughts. Once you come down to that, remember that when you don't think of them as thoughts, you think of them as something which you are. You say, I am unhappy. I am happy. I am jealous. As long as that conditioning remains, we cannot do anything about it. But when you decide that this sorrowful experience or this unhappiness that I'm going through, if when you look for its locus, and then you say this unhappiness is in my mind, this jealousy is in my mind, you are bringing a separation between you and the mind. And therefore, you can say that this is a thought in my mind. Okay, so every response is a thought. Let's not forget the basic trend of this discussion. Okay, there is a situation which is sukha dukkha or labha labha. So there are dualistic situations. One is good, one is bad in terms of the responses which a normal person gets. What are you saying? Those responses basically are thoughts in my mind. And once you say that these responses are thoughts in my mind, then you have to ask a question. How are the thoughts in my mind decided? And Shastra says there are two ways. One is triggered by your vasanas, involuntary thoughts over which you have no control, right? So how do you explain that? You see somebody on the road whom you have never seen in your life before, and you will probably never see him again, and you will say, oh, what terrible guy. I hate him. So you don't know him, you are not likely to know him, and yet that dislike has emerged in your mind, has risen in your mind. There is no rational reason. You have not exercised a willpower saying, I am not going to like that person. So they have been triggered by a vasanas. And therefore, those thoughts are involuntary thoughts. And the other one is voluntary thoughts using your free will. So this is an important analysis of thoughts, right? Some thoughts are involuntary, which you have, because when you say involuntary, it means thought will come and you have absolutely no control over those thoughts. When you say voluntary, then you are using your free will to generate a thought. Two completely opposite ideas. And where is the control over here? I can decide which one is going to be dominant. I can decide whether I will be controlled by my involuntary thoughts or whether I will use my free will to generate voluntary thoughts. That is the area of operation for me. And why it's very, very important, right? This particular analysis is extremely important because of your prarabdha, life will have present you with good experiences and bad experiences because your prarabdha contains good karma, good prarabdha and bad prarabdha both. And therefore life will present you with bad experiences and good experiences. In other words, in life you will have successes and failures. Therefore 100% success rate in your life is just not possible. Therefore we redefine success. Normally success is defined as what? As predominantly being successful in whatever objective I have in life. That is the normal worldly definition of success. The problem with this is that the 100% success is just not possible for anybody because all human life consists of negative and positive prarabdha. Therefore, we redefine success. Krishna redefined success to say that success in your life is the capacity for you, for your mind, to remain undisturbed in the face of success and failure. Whether you fail also, you remain undisturbed. Whether you succeed also, you remain undisturbed. So a successful person, we say, Vedanta says, is a person who knows how to come face to face with success and failure, as well as failure, without too much of an emotional disturbance. And that's what Krishna says, Sukha dukkhe same kritva. Labha alabha same kritva. In comfortable and uncomfortable situations, in sorrowful and pleasurable situations, let your mind remain undisturbed. In labha alabha, in victory as well as in defeat, in success and failure, let your mind be undisturbed. Nobody is successful all the time. Success comes with failure. And also, the same thing is repeated, Jaya Ajaya, again, success and failure. Okay. So that this verse does not teach you how to succeed all the time. It teaches you how to face both success and failure with a mind which is not too disturbed. And therefore the word tatha, therefore, tatha means afterwards. After what? After having prepared your mind to be the same, to be undisturbed in success and in failure, yuddhaya yujyasva. Arjuna, get ready to fight. Why fight? Because you are in the battlefield. What is the significance of the battlefield? Arjuna is doing your duty. And therefore, for us, if you have to translate, you have to say that get this mind of yours refined enough, make it understand that success and failure will be part of your life because I have got prarabdha karma, which is good and bad. And having prepared that mind in this manner, do your duty. Arjuna's duty is to fight because he's a Kshatriya, he's a warrior. But for all of us, Yuddha Yujyasva simply means do whatever is your duty. Do what is to be done. And if you work with this attitude, Naivam Papam Avapsyasi, you will never have a spiritual fall. You will not incur any more papam. That means you will not have any spiritual fall. Remember, papam means the obstruction to your spiritual progress. So Krishna is not guaranteeing that you will have material successes all your life. Material ups and downs will definitely come. You will not be able to avoid them at all. But with this attitude of a karma yogi, there will be never be a spiritual downfall. That is what being expected, what is being said over here. What is a lesson? If I have expected to be successful all the time, that is my mistake. It's not a mistake of the circumstances. I did not prepare adequately. It's like preparing a business plan. You know, all of us who have had, planning exposure in business will know that the first thing is to have backup. You have to have plan A, which is your major plan. You have to have a plan B, which is the alternative plan. You have to have a plan C, which is if plan A and B fails, what you will do. All these you have to have. And if you are not prepared, whose mistake is it? It is exposing my own limitation. So any adversity where I am upset, it only clearly tells me that you did not plan enough. You were not prepared with a plan B. You were not prepared with a plan C. The fault is your own. What is the point of blaming the world or blaming Bhagavan? And therefore it says, Papam na avapsyasi. You have to learn from every experience. And one thing we should always remember in this context. What is the context? This entire context, Bhagavad Gita, remember, a lot of people say that Bhagavad Gita is focusing on karma yoga. But Shankaracharya again and again and again has said in all his commentaries, the primary tatparyam of Bhagavad Gita is the same as that of any Upanishad, moksha. Everything else is only subsidiary. And therefore, karma yoga is definitely there in Bhagavad Gita. Many of the Upanishads also talk about karma, karma shastra. In fact, Upanishads like Chandogya Upanishad, 5 of the 8 chapters, Chandogya has 8 chapters. 5 of the 8 chapters deal with Dharma Shastra. Only 3, 6, 7, 8 deal with Jnana Yoga. Therefore, everywhere you will find that Karma Yoga and Upasana Yoga is the majority. It doesn't mean that is the Tatparya. Karma Yoga and Upasana Yoga are necessary for what? To convert the unprepared sadhaka, the anadhikari. Remember, the prepared sadhaka is called the adhikari. So it is all Karma Yoga, all Upasana Yoga is meant to convert the anadhikari, the unprepared sadhaka, into a adhikari, a prepared sadhaka. Adhikari is what? Sadhana chatushtayam. All the 4 disciplines are there. And once you are an adhikari, then you come to Jnana Yoga, Shravanam, Maranam, Nididhyasanam. So here Krishna is talking to Arjuna. Arjuna is not an adhikari at this stage. And therefore, the very important corollary from here. When you start to teach, do not teach Jnanam to a person who is not prepared. You can teach Jnanam only to a person who is prepared. If he is an adhikari, then only should you teach. And in his commentary on this verse, Shankara adds, Natu tatparyena. This is not the tatparyam of the Gita. What is not? Karma Yoga and Bhakti Yoga, even though they are discussed in great detail in Bhagavad Gita, this is not the tatparyam of the Gita. They are all supporting disciplines alone. And therefore, Jnana Yoga is the main discipline. So you might ask a question. You are saying that Jnana Yoga is main discipline. Is there any method of determining what is the tatparyam of any text? Is there any method at all of determining what is the tatparyam of any text? Yes, there is. Okay. So there is a small little verse. Upakramau upasamharau abhyaso purvata phalam. So upakramau upasamharo abhyaso purvata phalam arthavadopapattihi cha lingam tatparya nirnayah. Small little verse, beautifully. Okay. Look at the first one. Upakramaha. The word is upakramau upasamharaha, which is upakramaha upasamharaha. Upakramaha is opening summary. Upasamharaha is the closing summary. 2 words, technical words. In any discussion, not only discussion here, but any discussion anywhere, even if you look at the news, the daily news, they have upakramaha, upasamhara. They have the opening headlines and the closing headline. In between the two, the news is there. Similarly, here you have a opening summary and a closing summary. Upakramaha, upasamharaha. Upakramaha is chapter 2, right? Upasamhara is chapter 18. That is overall in the Gita. Now look at chapter. The same structure, remember, has to be maintained everywhere for consistency. If you look at chapter 2, what is the Upakramaha? What is the opening summary? Which verse is the opening summary?
Verse 11.
Verse 11. Very good. What is there? Karma Yoga or Jnana Yoga?
Jnana Yoga.
Jnana Yoga.
Jnana Yoga.
Jnana Yoga.
Now, the 39th verse we have not done, the next verse. But when you see 39th verse, that is the Upasamharaha. Again, it is Jnana Yoga, not Karma Yoga. So we are not going to the other lingams. Okay, there are 6 of them, but I'm just taking Upakrama, Upasamhara. 211 is the opening summary, 239 is the closing summary. Both are Jnana Yoga, indicating what? That the verses 31 to 38, which we are doing now, which is Karma Yoga predominant, is only incidental. It is not Tatparyam. This is how Tatparyam is extracted. It's a method of extraction. Okay. So, any questions?
Acharya, can I ask a question?
Yes.
You said there was some Sanskrit word for emotional quotient that Krishna uses. What is that word?
Samatvam. Samatvam. Samatvam yoga uchyate.
Thank you.
Okay.
Also, the definition of yoga, you just mentioned the quote which started with Samatvam. You told it's the very famous definition of yoga.
Yeah.
Could you please put that in the group later?
Yeah, it is the famous definition. Balance of mind is yoga. Yes, I'll put it in. No problem.
Thank you.
Any other question? Otherwise, we can move to the next verse.
Raviji, that little verse you gave, Upakrama and Upasamhara,
Yeah.
can you give the word meanings of the other 4 Lakshanas?
I will put it in the group. Detailed meanings. Okay. And remember, for you as yoga students, yoga here meaning Jnana Yoga students, that particular verse is very important. You should commit it to memory, because whenever you look at any shastram, any text, if somebody asks you what is the essence of that text, the tatparya of the text, apply those 6. Okay, now the most famous example of the application of that text is, of course, Chandogya Upanishad. So when we come to Chandogya Upanishad, then we'll see how each of those lingam are applied. Anyway, I'll put that. So let me note it down so that I don't forget. 2 things you all wanted, right? One is this verse. The other is Samatvam definition so far. Okay. Now we look at the next verse, which is verse number 39. So we chant. Esha te biheta sankhye buddhir yoge tvimam shrunu buddhya yukto yaya partha karma bandham prahasyasi. Okay. So now look at the grammar part first. Eshaha, then te bihita has to be broken because there is a avagraha there. You drop that. So te abhita. So esha te abhita sankhye buddhi yoge. So buddhi with the visarga. Buddhi yoge imam. Imam is tu plus imam. Tu plus imam. That u and the e combined to become twi. That's why tvimam. So tu imam shrunu. Buddhaya yuktaha. The yukto is when you bring the sandhi. Yuktaha. Yukta with the visarga. Yatha partha karma bandham prahasyasi. Okay. So sankhye. The anvaya. Sankhye yesha buddhi te abhihita. Full stop. Then, he partha, yoge tu imam shrunu yaya buddhaya yuktaha karma bandham prahasyasi. So, hey Arjuna, Sankhye. So, here Sankhya is Jnana Yoga, which is what? Sadvastu Viveka. The discrimination between Anatma, Atma, Sat and Asat. That is Sankhya over here, not the Sankhya of Sankhya Yoga, which is different. So Sankhya, why? Because you have to take it to the context. This is the chapter itself is Sankhya Yoga. Jnana Yoga basically it's called. So this itself is Sankhya. And Esha Buddhi. Buddhi here is the knowledge, not the intellect. So, Esha Buddhi, this knowledge regarding Sankhya. That's what it means. Esha Buddhi, Abhihita te. I have told you. Hey Arjuna, hey Partha. So that's the first statement here. It's a very important statement. He's saying, this Jnana Yoga, hey Arjuna, I have now told you. And therefore, he says, tu. On the other hand, hey Partha, Yoge imam shrunu. Now listen to that. That knowledge, yaya buddhaya yuktaha. Endowed with which? Karma bandham prahasyasi. you will be able to be free of bondage. Karma bandham is bondage. Prahasyasi, you will abandon, you will give up. So, or you will be free from. So essentially he's saying that, hey Arjuna, I have given you Jnana Yoga knowledge. Now you have to listen to that part of which I have not given you as yet. So this knowledge imparted to you till now, hey Arjuna, deals with Jnana Yoga, Sankhya. Now listen to the following teaching, which is dealing with Karma Yoga. That Karma Yoga we have to supply here. And endowed with that Karma Yoga, for you it will be simple to give up the bondage of karma, hey Arjuna. Okay. This is what is meant. Remember, the basic Jnana Yoga teaching is verse number 12 to 25 of this chapter. Right? So discovery of the freedom from external dependencies. If you want to put it in very simple language. Moksha is discovering how to be free and happy without depending on anything external. And here Krishna says that is Sankhya. So it is Jnana Yoga over here. So he says, Esha Sankhya Buddhihi Abhihita. I have told you this. Abhihita is taught, Ukta. And Sankhya means the truth as revealed in the Upanishads. And what is revealed in the Upanishads? The truth of yourself as what? As the Atma. So until now, Arjuna, I have given you this knowledge, this Jnana Yoga. But Arjuna, there is another knowledge also which you need. And Yoge Ima Buddhihi Shrunu. Therefore, you listen to that now, Arjuna. Remember, Jnana Yoga is the only remedy for sorrow. Right? That's why he says, Gatasuna Gatasumscha Nanu Shochanti Panditaha. 11th verse. Why is he introducing Karma Yoga? Is Karma Yoga another means of liberation? A lot of people say there are more than one means of liberation. But Vedanta does not accept. Because Krishna very clearly says, Jnanam alone, knowledge alone is the means for liberation. Then why Karma Yoga? Because everybody is not fit to enter Jnana Yoga. It requires preparation. Just as you cannot apply for a master's degree without having a bachelor's degree, you cannot come to Jnana Yoga without initial preparation. And therefore, Krishna is presenting Karma Yoga here as the preparatory ground before entering Jnana Yoga. So what is the full sequence of study? Follow Karma Yoga, follow Upasana Yoga, prepare your mind, and thereafter go to Jnana Yoga and be liberated. Remember that Jnana Yoga is impossible without Karma Yoga, because it is Karma Yoga which gives you the prepared mind. You are a qualified adhikari only after Karma Yoga and Upasana Yoga stages are over. And therefore, Jnana Yoga is impossible without Karma Yoga. At the same time, Karma Yoga is not complete, is incomplete without Jnana Yoga. Right? There is, some people might say, but it says that in Kali Yuga, Jnana Yoga is difficult. Right? And a lot of scriptural verses also talk about this, that in this Kali Yuga, Jnana Yoga is difficult. It's true. Jnana Yoga is difficult. Not only in Kali Yuga, in every yoga. And therefore, some people will tell you that since Jnana Yoga is difficult, why do you want to get into it? You try some other yoga. You try, Karma Yoga, Raja Yoga, Kundalini Yoga, something you try. But Krishna says no. If Jnana Yoga is difficult, there is no other option. You cannot try any other yoga because no other yoga can give you liberation. So Jnana Yoga is the only method. And if Jnana Yoga is difficult for you, what is the solution? Solution is to do what?
Yoga.
The solution is to make Jnana Yoga easy. Right.
Acharya ji, what about Bhakti Yoga?
It's also part of Karma Yoga. We'll discuss that at a later stage. There is only Jnana Yoga. Bhakti Yoga cannot give you liberation. Bhakti yoga, just like karma yoga or upasana. Bhakti yoga actually is, karma yoga is the basic classification. Bhakti, then upasana, all these are sub classifications of karma yoga, right? So there will be very detailed discussion of bhakti in chapter 12. So I'm afraid you'll have to hold your impatience until then. It's very systematic.
Vipassana yoga.
We cannot jump place to place. Okay, so if Jnana Yoga is difficult, it means there is an obstacle, right? Whenever we find something difficult to do, it simply means that there is some obstacle, which means that I am not prepared. So there is a pratibandha, an obstacle because of which I am finding Jnana Yoga difficult. And if you find that, for example, you are new in office and you are finding your work difficult, what do?
Ask a colleague's help.
To do what? What are you doing when you ask the colleague's help?
To explain.
Simplify it to make it easier.
What does that do to you?
I'm training myself,
Help you
preparing
understand.
myself.
Help you
Because that
understand.
non-understanding is your pratibandha, your obstacle. So we are removing that obstacle, right, by asking our colleagues. And therefore, if Jnana Yoga is difficult, it simply means there are some obstacles. And you should find methods of making that Jnana Yoga easier. And what is the obstacle? An unprepared mind. That is why Jnana Yoga is difficult for you. So just remember that Jnana Yoga is neither easy nor difficult. It simply depends whether I find it easy or difficult. It depends upon what type of mind I have. So if I am finding it difficult, it means my mind is not prepared, and therefore I do Karma Yoga. And once I do Karma Yoga, and Upasana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga, all the possible yogas which I can do for Chitta Shuddhi, for purification of mind, Buddhaya Yukta. Once I have mastered this science of Karma Yoga, and I have practiced it sufficiently, what will happen? Karma bandham prahasyasi. I will destroy all the obstacles of this. I will destroy all the obstacles born of karma, and I will certainly get moksha. So what are the obstacles? All kind of emotional problems, anxiety, fear, depression, worry, jealousy, greed. All these are classified into one big lump called samsara. And therefore moksha, liberation, means what? It means enjoying a very calm and prepared mind. A mind which does not have the problem of all these common samsaric problems, depression, anxiety, anger, all these are not there. Right? Another question comes, why is Krishna saying all this? Because we only say jnanat eva kaivalyam. Only through jnanam can you get kaivalyam. But Krishna is saying, this karma yoga which I am teaching you, you please practice and you will get moksha. Because of verses like this, you have very common misinterpretations. Are there two independent paths? Is Karma Yoga one path? Is Jnana Yoga one path? Is Bhakti Yoga one path? Is Kundalini Yoga one path? And Jnana Yoga is the most difficult path and requires a very long time. And therefore, there are many teachers who will say that don't waste your time studying scriptures. Instead, you spend all that time on Kundalini Yoga or on Karma Yoga. And Krishna himself says, they will quote the same verse to you. Krishna himself says, Karma bandham prahasyasi. You will get moksha. Okay. How do we understand? So we have to look at such cases where there are contradictory interpretations possible. What we do is that we look at the commentators. And for us, the major commentator is Shankara. Shankara says this is called, okay, let me explain first. There are two types of statements in the scriptures. One is called a vakya. A statement is called a vakyam. Okay. So scripture has two types of statements. Pramana vakyam and arthavada vakyam. So pramana vakyam basically is the statement which gives you shows you how the way, shows you how to attain the benefit which the statement is telling. So jnanat eva kaivalyam is pramana vakyam. Through jnanam only you can get moksha. That is pramana vakyam. It has to be taken at its face value. Then there is something called the arthavada vakyam. So it's a glorificatory statement. What is called, in English we call it a hyperbole, exaggeration, not meant to be taken literally, only meant for infusing enthusiasm, right? All glorifications are stuti. All the, in various scriptures you will see that there is a glorification of idols, of karma, of devis. There is no teaching over there. There is no pramanam over there. They are all arthavada vakyam, an exaggeratory statement meant to induce or create interest in the mind of the listener. So look at the word karma bandhanam. It is a bondage caused by karma, right? Which is what? In the form of punyam and papam. And hence Krishna is talking about freedom from punyam and papam, which can be misinterpreted as moksha, which is freedom from punyam and papam is moksha, right? And therefore, this particular statement, if you misinterpret it, it can be taken as Krishna is directly saying that karma can give you moksha, because karma bandhanam prahasyasi. Can karma directly destroy punyam papam? No. Scripture is very clear. Karma cannot destroy punya papam, and therefore karma cannot give you moksha. But karma yoga will give you the grace of the Lord, Ishvara Anugraha, because of which you will have the purified mind, and therefore you will get the opportunity to come to Vedanta, to come to Jnana. Krishna has not said all these things, but Shankara in his commentary says that all this is in the background in Krishna's mind when he is talking about this, and therefore Krishna actually means that you should do karma yoga, you should do upasana yoga, you should get purification of mind, chitta shuddhi, then you should do shravanam, then you should do mananam, and then nididhyasanam, and then you will get moksha. This is the essence of the statement which Krishna has made, and this is how we should interpret. If you interpret it directly as saying, buddhya yukto yaya partha karma bandham prahasyasi, it means that, hey Arjuna, I have taught you jnana yoga, and many teachers say that if you find it difficult, Krishna is giving this an alternative path. Jnana yoga is difficult for you, Arjuna, and therefore you do your duty, you fight the war, and you get moksha. That is the interpretation which a lot of teachers give, which is wrong, which is what Shankara says. He says that Krishna may not have said all these things, but in the background, Shankara says Krishna has got the idea that Arjuna has to first do karma yoga by fighting the war, upasana yoga also, then he will get chitta shuddhi, then he will revisit the teaching already given in the first 13-14 verses, and then he will get moksha. That is the tatparyam of this particular verse. So with this, I'll stop for today. Any questions? You're welcome.
So what is upasana yoga?
Upasana is basically meditation.
Acharya ji,
Yes.
would is Mahavakya and Pramana Vakya, are they the same?
Yes, Mahavakya is Pramana Vakya.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
but how do you respond to a person who says, I'm spiritual, I'm not religious, so I will not do any of these pujas and following the restrictions or anything during puja days and all? So,
see, basically my take is that every shastram, every Veda, every Upanishad is very clear that you cannot understand the shastram unless you are prepared. And if you have to be prepared, your mind has to be a quiet mind. For that, you have to have had karma yoga, upasana yoga. And if somebody says, I don't need it, then you can say that, yes, in his last birth, he must have done all this and now he is prepared. That is for him to say. You cannot respond at all. I would say yes.
yeah. Okay. So it's just a way to get the discipline required. Okay, you have to follow certain austerities during certain days and all. They don't want to do that, but
Yeah.
they say, okay, but we don't not believe in God, but we don't want to do anything like that.
Correct. That is one way. because it requires a lot of work to do karma yoga. I am not saying you should do you should do 20 times a day puja and all that. It's not necessary. But the fact is that Ishvara has to be there in your life. You have to start with Aguna Ishvara. If there is no Lord in your life, how can you say I am the Lord? Ultimate teaching is what? I am Ishvara. And if you don't believe in Ishvara in the first place, where is the question of coming to a point where you can say I am Ishvara?
And so certain places like temples and all have certain vibrations which you don't get if you're sitting in the house and remembering the God and all. So if you have to visit it, you can argue that, okay, these are the places where you need to go to get those feelings, or you get that atmosphere which might not be in your house.
It is always good for a seeker to expose himself to these, which is why we always recommend. Everywhere I say, come to the ashram. Why? Whether you want to do a yoga teaching or not, that 1 month in the ashram is going to give you a lot of spiritual inputs. So that's why we say come to the ashram. You may not want to be a yoga teacher. You may not even want to do TTC, but at least come as a yoga vacationer for 1 month. You will find a change in your whole attitude. TTC is different because it forces you to do everything, and therefore you end up doing everything. And that is why TTC is recommended. As a yoga vacationer, you have a little bit more freedom, so you might choose to skip something. The discipline is not as severe. But subjecting yourself to that discipline is always very good.
Sorry to take that, sir. Could we have details on this yoga vacation that you're talking about? How do we get that?
I'll put up in the group, okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So you mentioned 2 vakyams that Shastras have. One is the Pramanam Vakyam. The other is the glorification Vakyam. What is the name for that?
Arthavada.
Okay, thank you.
So one question, I'm not sure if it is right or wrong, but I wanted to
All
ask you.
questions are okay, right? There are no right and wrong questions. They're only questions.
So the Samatvam Yoga Uchyate, the balance of mind is yoga, and Krishna says that you need to be same in pleasure and pain, in loss and gain. So isn't it also like after Krishna is telling that you are the Atman yourself, then how does it matter if it is pleasure or pain, if it is loss or gain, because you know the reality that you are infinite.
Once you know that, the rest of teaching does not apply to you. That's the catch in the whole story. If you know your Atman, then that, like Krishna says in a different verse in this chapter itself, then it's like you have a flood around you. Why would you go looking for a glass of water?
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Acharya ji, just one quick question. We are all okay, Karma Yoga is there, Upasana Yoga and Jnana Yoga. So we are all a little bit into all these steps. So is this the way? Is that okay? Because we are not entirely doing only Karma Yoga or Upasana Yoga. We are also doing some Jnana Yoga. So is that the norm in most?
It's okay. See, if you are going to say that until you get full Chitta Shuddhi, you should not come to Jnanam,
Right.
then most of us cannot come to Jnanam for several lifetimes.
Correct.
And therefore, it's okay to expose yourself together.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, so with this we'll stop. Thank you for your patience. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Acharya ji.